Can I get a countdown? Whoop, whoop. And welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the NASEF Scholastic Esports Academy 101 podcast. This is episode, actually, it says 4. I'm looking at it now. It's supposed to be 5. All good. Welcome back. My name is Jarrell Batak. I am the Chief Operating Officer for NASEF, and we are gathering all kinds of great minds to talk about all the different opportunities that Scholastic Esports can provide your young people and your communities. Just to quickly recap the last few episodes, we really spent some time defining Scholastic Esports, talking about the strategies, and in our last episode, we got down and dirty with the game titles and thinking about how we can consider and select those game titles for our programs. We have an exciting conversation today. We're talking about Scholastic Esports anywhere and everywhere. But before we jump in, why don't we give our wonderful educational leaders here an opportunity to introduce themselves. So we'll just go around the dock here. Feel free to jump in and we'll just tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing with Scholastic Esports.
All right, I guess I'll go first. My name is Jeff Bostic. I am the Digital Media Associate at Central Library in Rochester, New York. So I run the Digital Media Learning Lab, where we have a new esports setup that started in September. And then we have a whole bunch of other digital media stuff, photography, film. We have a Glowforge, we have music studios. So we have a whole bunch of stuff, and esports is the newest thing for us.
Alrighty, I'm Adrienne Moliere. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am a high school teacher and the esports coordinator at University View Academy, a K-12 charter school here in Louisiana, as well as the co-founder of Bayou Esports, where we work to bring esports to the families of students with disabilities.
And hello all, my name's Tyler Hahn. I'm the director of the Cherokee Public Library in rural northwestern Iowa. So my adventures with esports have been numerous throughout the last, I guess about 5 years now. So I do just a little bit of everything within the sphere.
Thanks for those quick little intros. I'm sure we're gonna dive deeper into the details of what you all are doing for your communities. But just to kind of overview what we're really trying to discuss here, when we define Scholastic Esports anywhere and everywhere, this is really hitting the point that, you know, typically when we talk about Scholastic Esports, a lot of folks kind of imagine it in traditional K-12 school settings, which is exciting and it's an opportunity, but we also see the value of what Scholastic Esports can bring to other communities that may not necessarily be just the traditional school environment. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of young people and students out there that may not be attending or maybe even dropping out. And so it's really important to consider some of these alternative spaces in order to provide more equitable access for all of these wonderful opportunities that Scholastic Esports can provide. You know, we talked about it just with our intros here. We have libraries and we have even looking at outside of traditional school environments and working with special education. So I'm really excited to dive deep because ultimately, when we talk about equity and access, this gives us an opportunity to really address the issue of diversity and equity within esports. As I think we've all seen in general, you know, the esports industry may not necessarily be reflective of the communities that we see or want to see. And so we're really working hard within the K-12 space to really change that culture. So we'll dive right in. That was a quick little recap and overview of our discussion. But I really wanted to get into it in terms of you know, when we're thinking about diversity, when we're thinking about representation in particular, right, that can take on, you know, different terms and terminology. So let's take a step back. What do we really consider when we're talking about DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion? And then what are we really talking about when we mean representation? And is it the same or is it different? So let's dive into that. Let's start with defining the playing field here, and then we'll dive into more specifics. So what does DEI and or representation mean to you all?
I'll have been. I think DEI in general, at least from my experience, coming kind of from a group that is not traditionally the first thing you think of when you think of esports, a woman and Black. But also as a special education teacher, I'm constantly kind of working to also take myself out of my shoes and put myself in my students' spaces. So things that I don't have similar experiences to them, things, you know, with gender identity, with the various types of disabilities, cognitive and physical. And in terms of equity, and then I think diversity and inclusion is just making sure that space is welcoming to everybody, but that also everybody actually has an opportunity to participate in that space, whether that's getting them the tools they need to be able to play Smash Bros, or having conversations, facilitating discussions to make sure that students that have had experiences where they've been misgendered, or they have had issues where maybe comments are made that are offensive to their sexuality, and just making sure everybody knows that we are all together to have this nice fun experience with each other, but let's make sure that it includes everybody by being respectful and just mindful of that.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to do a quick intro. Malcolm just joined us. Malcolm, do you mind just introducing yourself, where you're at, where you're from, and what you're doing with Scholastic Esports?
Hello, everybody. My name is Malcolm Coley. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Futures First Gaming. We are a educational technology, media, and a esports entertainment company. We are focused on bringing Black and brown kids into technology with the conduit of esports. Right now, we are located in Delaware. That is our headquarters, but we have a multitude of partnerships across the board. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here and, you know, giving my 2 cents.
Absolutely. So just to catch everyone up, we're diving into really defining the foundation for our conversation around DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and then representation. Is it the same or is it different? So starting with that, feel free to jump in. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I'm just glad that we're having these conversations around, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion. They're extremely important. You know, just maybe 5 years ago, you know, we weren't even having these conversations that are so in depth, right? And what's also interesting is that a lot of people tend to limit diversity, equity, inclusion to just a few things and a couple of silos, where diversity, equity, inclusion is such a big thing, and there's so many different silos and things to talk about. On our end here at Futures First Gaming, we're really huge on, you know, being the voice for, you know, of course, Black kids, brown kids, and definitely women, right? Because women in the esports industry don't have as loud as a voice as other people. So, you know, I think it's very important to just, before we even really have deeper conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, we need to just be listening, right? So that we can just be in a position to cultivate those conversations. Are we listening the right way to the people who don't feel included in this space? Because if we're not listening correctly, we can't include the correct way. So I think the foundation of diversity, equity, inclusion is just simply listening so that we can be inclusive of everybody who wants to be a part of this industry.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to touch on as well that I am elated to see that after school is no longer like an afterthought within Scholastic Esports, because we have seen, unfortunately, that there are some kids in traditional school who might not necessarily be succeeding or thriving at their fullest potential, where our sorts of programs within the public libraries or nonprofits which focus on empowering and uplifting these diverse voices within our communities, give these students a chance to thrive and experience like entire worlds that might not otherwise be possible, and experiences that might not otherwise be possible.
I think the unique perspective from my library is we were started as a violence prevention initiative. So when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, we are trying to pull in, kids from the streets, kids from these poor communities that have a lot of violence. So we want to be a place where kids that might otherwise turn to the streets, where they can go, and be part of something that's positive. I think we'll get into later the other things that we're doing to, give these kids a positive experience and something that'll pull them away from the streets. But we want to include the kids that, might have bad language, that, might be into the streets, might be maybe a little seem a little dangerous, but when they get into our space, they can connect with me, they can connect with other people in the library. They can get in on these games. They can, bring their friends in, and they can be there for hours where they're safe. Because I have had the experience of losing a kid that has been in my space before, to gun violence. So, from our perspective at our library, being in a violent city, we want to include kids that, might be a part of that violence and try to pull them out of that.
So it looks like we got one more guest to introduce as well. Let's go ahead and add her in. If you don't mind introducing yourself, our newest NASEF team member.
Hey guys, sorry for my delay. I'm actually in LA shooting with NASEF right now. But I am Jihan. I am the new esports educational specialist. I am here joining you all as a former educator, forever educator, a co-founder of Beebotics with my 14-year-old son. And one of my favorite people is on here, Malcolm, where is my amazing, amazing counterpart in this space. But we have great energy. Hi. Hey, guys. Hi.
Hey, Gigi.
Adrian. Hey.
Hey.
Sorry, I have a voice that's going in and out. Bear with me. But I'm happy to join everybody. Hi.
You were cheering pretty hard this weekend, weren't you?
I was,
Jihan's an Eagles fan. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it out there. Jihan likes the
Eagles. We're not gonna start this, Malcolm.
Put her on blast. All good.
We're not gonna start this. I'm still healing.
All right. Yeah, let's just dive in. Now that we got the whole crew here, I'm super excited. I can feel the energy. I mean, obviously we're talking about DEI and representation, but we're also talking about how it relates to esports and Scholastic Esports. So you all know me. I like to keep it open and free. Feel free to jump in. Just share, in terms of the work that you're doing with your programs, how are you creating more opportunities for inclusivity, more representation within the program, and how are you facilitating that within both the program, but as well as in the broader community? That's
a loaded question. I think, like I was saying earlier, it starts with listening. Being in a position we always talk about leveling the playing field, right? And I think that's why we have a lot of conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? What are we doing to really give people equity, right? Because, we talk about equality and we talk about equity, right? Those are two different things, right? So how do we give people equity, and how do we embrace equality across the board, right? In some instances and in some communities, right, there are a lot of kids that start behind the 8 ball, right, as opposed to being in front of it, right? So just making them, it's simple things, right? Just simply making them aware That's what we try to do as a whole here at Futures First Gaming. We just want to make the kids aware in our program, like, hey, you have an opportunity through playing video games to learn transferable skills that you can utilize in all industries, right? Like every single industry right now, they need content, right? Content. We all know that spiel, right? But how can we teach you those skills that you can create that content through picking up a controller, right? And with that brings that equity piece across the board, because everybody can do it, right? And I'm sure everybody here has some instance of providing that level of equity for the kids that we work with on a daily basis. So, just starting there, making them aware that, hey, you can do this, and these are real skills that you can utilize across the board in any single industry. So that's a lot of the stuff that we're doing here at Futures First Gaming with our curriculum, implementing it in schools, and having our pathway programs with, a couple select colleges here in Delaware. So, I'll just keep going back to that awareness. Just kids knowing that they can do this puts them in a whole nother atmosphere.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in from a couple of different lenses. I like to say I'm just a mom. Malcolm made me coin that term. But I am just a mom, but I'm a mom of everyone. I'm a mom of students. I'm a mom of just believing in my son. And one of the things of which my son and I speak to the company that my son and I founded, because we are the awareness piece. When I looked at all the organizations that were out here that were doing esports, Scholastic Esports, everybody wanted to quickly get into the activation and have kids game. But when we're really talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to understand the back parts. We have to understand that the parents are our pushers. Our parents are our pillars. And so if we don't involve our parents, then our parents are going to be left out and still have this naysaying attitude of gaming isn't real. It's not believable. And so when I started looking at stats, I'm also a PhD student at UCI. So I work under Dr. Constance and Katie, who are amazing women in this space. And when I look at, when I started looking at stats and started looking at just patterns, one of the things that I noticed is that when we speak about diversity, everybody wants to sweep it under the rug. And so I'm one to tear it up, lift it up, and show that there's a space and there's a table for everyone. And I'll spit some facts. So 87% of Black kids game weekly, but only 4% of Black people are game developers. That is a big issue compared to other counterparts of 71% being white men. So how can we close that gap? How do we look at those measurements and find resources and tools to close that? And so I created a company with my son where we are only spreading awareness and showing kids the opportunities that are at large. One of the amazing things that we did was actually go into one of the roughest areas in Watts, California these past couple of weeks, is bring esports to the projects, aka HUD housing, to show communities of what can happen, what is going on in your own neighborhood. And then that's brought to having students so excited, first of all, on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, having 21 participants is huge. But seeing their excitement of what was going on after and looking forward to what's coming next is the reason why I did that work. And that's also making sure that diversity is hitting those areas that are forgotten about. So making sure that we're bringing those clubs, making sure that they understand that they have that visual representation. Because a lot of us look at the representation from the behind the scenes, or when we're looking at it and us going out into these communities and doing the work, students want to see themselves. And if they don't see themselves in this workspace, they're going to feel like they're left out. They're going to feel as though they don't have a home. That's why it's important that, which I love about NASEF, is that it really is the makeup of what the universe looks like, of what esports and gaming is actually supposed to look up. A rainbow full of different people coming together collectively to push one notion, and that's Scholastic Esports, knowing that we are creating impact and can allow people to be them. We have to meet students where they are. And the biggest piece is if that people that are organizing these esports tournaments are not a reflection of what our students look like, then we have to change that. And it begins with us, which is a true testament of exactly what this podcast looks like. This is what Scholastic Esports to look like. All rainbows, all shapes, all colors of people coming together to create impact for our next leaders of this generation, and understand that our kids are teaching us stuff. Like, I'm learning every day. And that's important to me.
I can jump in and talk about, the things that we're doing to, get our kids in and, like I said, maybe try to prevent a little bit of violence in Rochester. When we got our computers, the very first thing I did was install Unreal Engine 5 on them. Game development software. We got the nice expensive Alienware computers that can handle that type of software. So that was the first thing I did before the kids fill it up with captures and other games. I got the game development software on there, and I completed the 9-hour beginner course for developing games on Unreal Engine 5. That's something I haven't implemented yet, but I'm going to get my kids into developing those games, and they've got a whole bunch of templates and things on there for kids to develop games. That'll make it a lot easier. And then the next thing that we did, we recently had a tournament with the police in Rochester. So, as being a part of a violence prevention program, you got to, include the police. And we had, kids as young as 12, our middle schoolers, taking on, people that were in the police academy, going to become police in Rochester. And they played Fortnite together. They got to, eat pizza together, laugh and have fun. And the guys in the police academy, I want to call them kids because they look the same age as my high schoolers, but they actually they played Fortnite because they're super young, so it was a lot of fun. And we got people that are going to be police and working with kids that are in esports and trying to do something positive. And then when it comes to the professional development, there's a Gamers Nostalgia. It's a company that does gaming, professional gaming. They put on tournaments. They hosted a pretty big video game fight tournament recently. We have them actually coming on Saturday to do a little event where my kids are going to help, set up, help do shoutcasting. So we are teaming up with them and other people that we can find to help our kids look at professional things and see about setting up events, see about broadcasting, see about shoutcasting, get the behind the scenes look, get professional looks, and, learn a whole bunch of things besides just getting on the mouse and keyboard and playing. So we're got a full frontal assault going. And then, when they are playing, we set up our streaming so that they became Twitch affiliates so they can actually make money streaming. That's one thing I really want to build a community and get people watching and supporting so that they can have that revenue coming in. And, once that gets going, I'm sure, word will spread that if you join the team, the very first time you sit down and game, you'll be earning revenue. So we got a full frontal assault going for, building the community and, preventing violence.
Shout out to the Central Library Liberators. Hey.
And at least with, I'm sorry, Malcolm, do you want to touch on?
No. I just think that's lit that you put the Unreal on Alienwares from the rip. That we just need to take a moment and really, if you're not a gamer, you want to understand how big of a deal that is. So I kind of want to just take a moment real quick and be like, yo, kudos to you, Jeff, because it's almost kind of like if you know type thing. So kudos to you for making that happen. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I took that class, man. That class is amazing, man. It's some real dope stuff you can do with that, and it's not the traditional coding. They have this thing called Blueprint, where it's like drag and drop to code instead of writing all those lines. Man, it's going to be, when we get to it, it's going to be pretty awesome.
I love it. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on real quick too is like this monoculture for games, though, within esports titles. I've seen, at least with my program, that we give a lot of voice and choice for like anybody who's interested at the first part of the year, like, oh, we're doing esports. One of the very first questions we get is, well, what titles are you playing? Because at least some of our girls who are gaming are like, I might not play this title or that title, or I might be interested in this facet of club development. Whereas some of the traditional games, like there's a culture of toxicity where they know this and they're like, I want to avoid that because I've had a horrible experience online playing this game. So for instance, I stream weekly with another NASEF community leader. His name's JD Williams, where it's great for kids within my program as well, where they get to meet kids within like their own tribe, 2,000 plus miles away. But are any of you seeing this too, where you're starting to offer more indie titles or anything like this for your club development or for competition?
I'll jump in. I'll say not competition, but club development, yes. Because one of the things that I've sort of found that I had to do, because similar to like you said, the girls, for example, for the most part, those big titles is what you're gonna be seeing, the Rocket League, Brawlhalla, Fortnite, and not even just the girls. I feel like sometimes it's such a misconception that like, oh, it's just girls that like aren't super big on those games. But I have a lot of boys too that will pop in and just be like, hey, can we try Multiverses, or can we do Goose Goose Duck? And I'm like, I thought the Among Us phase was past us, and things like that. Or can we play GeoGuessr? And I'm like, y'all want more school after school? Cool. And just kind of doing those check-ins and them asking for different titles, because since we're virtual school and we're doing everything online in Discord, we have a channel that's called Try Games, and they just suggest games that they want to play. We look at the rating, we talk about it. Oh, can we have spectators? Can people jump in and play and things like that? And we learn about the game. And then in one of our club meetings, we play it, and then we put it on our community game night, like the Rolly thing. I can't remember what the website is called, but it goes on there. And then it might end up being this game that everybody gets to experience, because everybody can't make it to the club meeting, but everyone tries for the most part to make it to community game night. And so then they're like, oh, I haven't played this game before, but it also encourages them to try out something that they haven't tried before, because we all have our niches. We all have those games that we know we're good at. We like being good at them, and we kind of like bringing people in because we like to beat them at those games. So, but you have to try different things. And I found that that's been a good opportunity also for me to try new games and just learn about titles that I'm not familiar with as well.
So we're talking about representation, but I'll kind of plug Adriana here. I think part of the conversation also is inclusivity and looking at accessibility of gaming. So Adriana, do you want to talk a little bit more about your work?
Sure. As everybody was talking, I was, because the question was, how are you doing it? How are you, and I was like, I think I always sort of feel like I'm not doing enough. But kind of like as everybody was talking, I was like, oh, okay, wait, we do have that. So, all right, a couple of things. We have girls in gaming. And I think also something that I talked about recently was sort of being afraid also to plug things into club because of how parents or the school might react to them. And I gotta say, Adriana this semester is just like, I don't care, let's try it. If I get complaints, I'll handle that when I come to it. But in order to have those opportunities to facilitate those discussions or questions or things that you're not familiar with, like girls playing video games, or kids, teenagers developing games, or playing video games with students with autism or Down syndrome, or someone who's a paraplegic, or even just letting kids completely take over and not just run the club meetings, but plan my club meetings, which I appreciate because I also have to teach during the day. But on top of that, I think one of the recent things I'll say that I kind of had to fight for in us developing our esports room at my school. This has been basically being planned out for 2 years, and I'm a teacher. I'm coming from that side. not necessarily the IT side. But growing up, I never had a PC. The computer in the house was for work. I played all my video games on consoles. And one of the things that I sort of really had to fight for was putting consoles in the esports room. And the biggest pushback I had was, well, you don't need that because we can just, take it from the PC and we can stream it onto one of the TVs. And I did not see sort of this difference between us just being the fact that and I looked up the statistic. I wish I could remember it right now, but the amount of Black kids that have never, and they just have never had a PC. They've never played on a PC. And I use the example to them because I do game with the IT people at my school. And I said, you don't want to not use your GameCube controller. You have to use your GameCube controller. I prefer to use my Nintendo Switch controller. How would you feel if we had a competition and you now made this kid that's never played on a PC now play on the PC instead of the console they've been playing on for years? So even simply things like that, and using that as an opportunity to say, well, I have a lot of students with motor disabilities. They're struggling to move the joystick. They need something that's bigger, and saying, hey, if we're going to do this and we're going to do this right, I need joysticks that my students that either have Tourette's, that are that have tremors in their hands, that they can hold, that they can use, that they can sit down on a table and like everybody said, provide that opportunity and that equity. Because it's not fair to give somebody that has a different lived experience from you the same tool and expect the same outcome. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, a lot of stuff, and like Gian said, like continuing to learn. The assessment part has been great because I'm learning from my students and just adding in also that social emotional portion of it, just being like throwing in this little question of, do you feel like people care about you in this club? Do you feel like you matter? Do you feel represented? And not taking it negatively when a student tells me, no, I don't feel, represented right now, because that's a learning opportunity for me. I don't want anybody to not feel like they don't have a space for themselves in the club, because it's for everybody. But just using that as a learning opportunity to question and be like, okay, what can I do, or what can we do as a community to make this space more awesome to you, to make you want to participate a little bit more, and just monthly throwing that out and checking in, seeing if things are getting better, if they're getting worse, and learning from that.
Let's harp on that. I mean, we're talking about access now, thinking about, you've considered just the access point in which you're engaging with these types of programs. I mean, we know in general, even looking at it from the international stage with all of the international affiliates that we work with, I mean, a lot of different countries don't have access to PCs as well and are primarily focused on mobile gaming. And that seems to be a whole culture in itself. So, and then here in the US, right, we talk about access, and there is socioeconomic barriers to be able to access those types of technologies. So let's dive deeper into this concept of digital divide. Like, so Adrian, you've addressed it. How are you all addressing it within your scope of work, within your programs and your community, to create more access around that?
So we have here at Futures First Gaming, we have strategic partnerships. One of my strategic partners is a electronics manufacturer and distributor, right? So in terms of those consoles, the high-end gaming PCs, we're able to get a lot of them for a lower price, right? And we're also talking to Verizon to really, because it's not just necessarily a hardware issue, but it's also a connectivity issue as well, right? A lot of these kids who only have this, right? They don't connect as easily as someone else might be able to connect, right? So how do we kind of be in a position to And that's where we're talking about that equity piece, right? We got to give these kids the tools that they need, similar to what, I don't want to say it right. Adrian, did I say it right? Did I say it right? Adrian.
Nobody gets it right on the first time.
Okay,
That's okay.
okay.
That's cool.
I want to make sure I get it right. But to your point and what you were talking about, right? Like when you talk about having a certain controller for a certain child who has a motor skill issue, right? That's important. That's very, very, very important. And like I was saying, before, in terms of like that listening piece, well, along with that listening piece, you have to pay attention to the kids that you are serving, and you have to understand those small microcosms. Whereas, like, oh man, they can't game the way that they want because the connectivity in this area isn't the same as it is in the area that's right next to them. Or, this person has a console and this person has a PC, and it's just little small things that you got to pay attention to. And I think, and what I was saying before, we have a strategic partnership with one of my really, really, really good friends by the name of Nerded Now, and they are 100% focused on closing the gaps within the digital divide. So we partner with them so that we can be in a position to provide as many kids with devices that not only can they game on, but they can also be educated on as well. So we are, and I'm willing to work with everybody to connect him to all of you guys, because he's doing great things and we're doing great things as a collective, right? So, it's just understanding that those things are necessary in order to push this conversation forward. So, doing what we can.
I just wanted to jump in with a quick story on, I was very happy that we were covering this for kids. I recently had a kid come in whose mother seen the lab space first and then wanted to get her son to come in and game. And when he came in, she didn't give me any kind of warning. He had, I don't know, his diagnosis, but, significant delays, like it seemed, processing delays. And what she told me was that he needed to use like his PlayStation controller. And I was just super happy that we were able to do that, to provide a PlayStation controller instead of making him use a mouse and keyboard, and get him gaming and feeling comfortable. It's that just shows how important it is to make sure we have those different methods for kids to game, because they might not be comfortable on the mouse and keyboard. They might need to game how they do at home. And having that experience really let me know, like, hey, I'm super glad I have Xbox controllers and PlayStation controllers. And I have all the wires and cords if they bring their own. That experience really showed me, like, yeah, it was important to have at that moment to really help this kid and get him gaming and feeling comfortable immediately.
I'd like to touch on the digital divide real quick. I live in an area of middle America where connectivity is really difficult. Within my community of 5,000, there are 3 places where there's public Wi-Fi, and we at the public library are the sole place where you can connect to the Wi-Fi without having to provide a code on your receipt or purchase something in order to sit at the restaurant. Hotspots are well and fine, but I am also distant enough where those hotspots don't cover everybody. In a commute or in a county of 11,000, a little under half actually have access to like regular internet service like that. There are ways to get internet like satellite and things like that, but they're not necessarily reliable or equitable with our weather extremes, I guess I would say, back and forth. So for us, we offer that opportunity to check out devices, laptops and iPads, to give students and anybody in the community, as a matter of fact, that option to access internet and information in that manner. And furthermore, our internet is never off. It is always open and free to the public. And it was amazing, like, especially during the pandemic, we had just started keeping statistics about how many different devices were connecting to our internet. And we saw immediately there were 400 people connecting in one day. I can tell you last year, in a community of 5199, so 5,200 people, we had over 7,000 different devices connect to our internet for more than 20 minutes. That's immense and powerful.
Yeah, I want you to harp on that a little bit more, Tyler. I know we've had conversations around how the libraries are really that third space. I'm wondering if you could dive deeper into that for our audience.
Yeah, definitely. So we exist as a space where you don't necessarily have to spend any money. Like I said once before, we are simply here, and we're open for everyone. And I can speak anecdotally during I go back to COVID a lot because that's where I had started initially talking with Jarrell and NASEF and just started trying to get my gaming program going. And it was a matter of trying to connect a lot of our youth who didn't necessarily know what to do. Like when we canceled school, there wasn't anything else going on. There wasn't a virtual option. There wasn't anything going on. It was just, you're home now. We don't know what else to go ahead and do. So the library was actually able to start a few community game nights. We were able to be like, you can meet here, and maybe if you might not be able to like get 6 feet by somebody, you can bring your device and like you can play. We can go ahead. I talked with another library. They had a drive-in gaming event, which was absolutely amazing, where they had a projector on the side of a trailer and they all played Mario Kart together, which that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And we were able to do a couple of different things like that as well, but nothing nearly as cool as that. And I am extremely grateful for not only our libraries, but the role which libraries can play in their community. So, for instance, there are about 117,000 different libraries in the US. There are more libraries than Starbucks. You don't have to look far for one, and they all offer programs and services like this.
That's I'm actually very interested, Tyler. As you guys were providing that service for so many people, did you have any issues continuously being in a position to provide that service for so many people? Since you're like, assuming that you're in somewhat of a remote spot, as you said, connectivity was difficult because when you have so many people on Wi-Fi, it kind of bogs it down, right? So in the event where your internet had those types of issues, did anybody work with you guys? Like, how were you able to provide that level of connectivity for so many people?
We had to basically order new routers and refigure out our networking position immediately. And for us as well, I'm kind of in the corner lot in the middle of town, so we don't necessarily have a lot of parking spaces as well. We had to figure out how to optimize placement for our routers so that our Wi-Fi could cover even more ground. And it's interesting. So we use a service called Wi-Fi, where it tracks our Wi-Fi, and we were seeing people connecting to our Wi-Fi even in the middle of the night. We had people connecting at like 2:00 in the morning to go ahead and connect for like an hour or so. And it was pretty amazing, being like, well, maybe they're paying their bills or doing their banking or something like that. But if they're just going to sit out there in their car and watch Netflix, you know what? That's just as good too. Anything to go ahead and help somebody out.
That ain't bad. That ain't bad. That ain't bad. I like it. That was good. That ain't bad.
So we skipped around a bunch. I actually wanted to dive a little bit deeper around the challenges, and I know we definitely don't have time to go super deep, but I'm just curious, when we're talking about some of the barriers, we talked about, equity in terms of the technology, in terms of the connectivity. What are some of the other barriers that you all have found within your work? And then maybe in general, like, what are some potential strategies to overcome some of those barriers?
Can I jump straight into that? Because
Please,
it's something that I'm seeing
yes.
right now. It's the educational part of it. It's the awareness part of what is esports? What is it going to do for me? What are the benefits? And I speak on that because when you're coming from Black and Brown communities, it's taking a lot of convincing, a lot of getting to make them feel comfortable about it, because like I say, in a lot of urban communities, it's a naysayer. It's going against the grain. If you're a gamer, you're pretty much not worth anything, and so it's changing the mindset of those within the communities from generations to generations to generations. But then also, once you have the kids there, it's keeping them their attention, understanding where they are at, understanding how it can keep their attention and momentum, and it not be a disappointment. Because a lot of times when we're looking at different programs that come into inner city communities, they get there, they're happy to start an activation, but they don't keep the momentum going. And so understanding what keeps the momentum going, how do we keep the parents buy-in, but how do we truthfully build community? A lot of times we misunderstand and misuse the word community when it comes to building in this space. And so really making sure that you are bringing that representation, building that community, creating that impact is really important. And some of those strategies are workshops. Some of those strategies are going in, having good conversations with people, educational conversations. Like I said, I did a workshop in Watts, and it was very surprising that none of the kids knew what esports was. They didn't even know that they can go and pursue this as a college degree. But Compton College in Dominguez Hills is right down the street from them. So we have to make sure that representation, that pipeline, when we're talking about pipelines, K through 12 is being able to pipeline themselves within the local area universities so that they can understand that the access that they have, and that comes with creating those communities, understanding what your impact is and your reasoning, but then also looking at alternative mechanisms that you can add until it's time for everybody to have those resources.
I feel like me and Jihan talk about this stuff all the time because we do. I even want to go a step further, right? I'll just be worried about my kids eating. You know, it goes that deep. Like, did you eat today? Like, did you eat today? You know, do you got on clean clothes? You know, even before we get to a
Do you have your
esports,
hygiene product?
yeah, like for a lot of, you know, the young ladies, do you have the products that you need for your feminine care? You know, we got, you know, we get that deep, you know, with our kids because, you know, forget esports for a second. Are you okay as a human being that lives in these areas that, you know, I'm from these areas, right? I grew up in this, right? So, you know, I understand the mindset that these kids have, and just the things that they see on a daily basis, which they only see a couple of ways out. Until Jihan's point, that's why it takes so much convincing, because they only see this or this or this. And plus, you know, social media is crazy right now, but they only see this or this or this, not understanding that, hey, this over here is definitely a means to provide for you and your family in the future, right? But even before we get all the way to that, like, you know, do you know your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s? Like, you know, like I said, did you eat today? Were you able to, you know, take a shower? You know, we kind of we partnered with a few folks, you know, in order to help our kids just be in a position so that they can be confident about just themselves as a human being, right? You know, even before we get to the esports part, because that's such a vital part of their growth, right? And just them being a person. You know, so I'm just thankful for some of the partners that we have that we're able to provide some of these services for these kids, you know. And then, you know, it's a pathway into, you know, the whole esports conduit into technology. But, you know, it's like, hey, did you eat today? Are you hungry? Let me go get, you know, we try to get that deep. So, you know, I know other people are doing the same thing. So
Can I take it in another direction really quickly? So I'm a little bit spoiled. I have all the support I need. We got, you know, all the expensive computers. We've got, you know, the backing of the police. I've got the backing of the library. We've got the finances set up so that these kids can stream and make revenue. The thing I'm finding hard is to get the communities support with their time. So I can, you know, get the donations and all that stuff, but with these kids, when they're streaming, when they're doing these events, if they had a couple hundred maybe 1,000 people watching them when they stream for 1 hour on Wednesday, 1 hour on Monday, the revenue from Twitch or from YouTube or whatever, it would support them doing whatever they want. They could start ordering food for themselves. They could start ordering their jerseys and their clothes to promote themselves. They could have those new fresh clothes. They could start having the games as soon as they come out. They could have all that revenue, and the library has the folders for them. The donation part of the library has the folders for them all set up. But without the community coming together, these kids talking to other kids to, tell them to watch the stream where they could, have this thing to learn the value of their attention and start giving that attention to themselves and, profiting from that and really knowing that, hey, I'm not taking anything from you. The library's not going to take anything from you. If you guys learn the value of your attention, give it to each other. You have a folder where the library is going to put all that revenue out there for you guys to decide if you want to buy games, if you want to do giveaways for each other, you want to, get food, you want to do jerseys, hats, all that kind of stuff. You want to do events, you want to do, whatever you want to do. All you guys need to do is learn the value of your attention, learn the value of your views, because a lot of times you're giving these views to people that are already millionaires on YouTube. Watching TV, giving those views, watching those commercials, makes people rich. If you watch each other play video games for 2 hours a week, you have access to everything you need. I got to get in front of more people and in the community, more of the kids in Rochester, and tell them that. But I have it all set up. I've gone pretty hard for these kids to be ready to game instead of being violent and really profit from it. But it's really hard to get people's time without an incentive. So that's where I'm struggling with. I need people's time, and we could turn things around in a big way.
It was interesting you said that. It's so many of my kids, I tell them just to that. Like, I'm like, if you could just stream and get that attention of your folks, and you could get an affiliate on Twitch, or you get enough subscribers on YouTube to get paid off the ads. I'm like, man, extra $300 a month would change your life.
So maybe it sounded like, because Malcolm also, he's not mentioning that right now, but he is also a social media expert and has a master class. So maybe it can be a partnership with Future First Gaming and the library to really teach these kids the entrepreneurship life of content creation and streaming, and have Malcolm come in, and that can build a partnership. As far as also building communities, reach out, figure out how me and how Malcolm can help you. Because outside of NASEF, we have a big following in this industry, and helping put on a panel so that the community can really see this is what it looks like. Our kids can do this. This is real people actually doing it. It's all about just reaching out. You are not alone in this. There are other people here to support you, and just let us know how we can do that. But that's why I always say, and I use this model from Maze featuring Frankie Beverly, and maybe I'm showing my age right now, but we are one, and it's lyrics from their song, We Are One, and we are one to support, to make sure that we're pushing this movement and this fellowship of Scholastic Esports, not just within our students, but our community, by creating impact.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We need, we made Twitch affiliates, so that's how we can, get the revenue from streaming. But in that process of making it, we've never gotten the numbers, that we got on that final stream when I was telling people, hey, we're going to be affiliates if we get this amount of views. We were, and I think close to 70 people watching at, at a time. And then, a bunch of different people joining in and watching for a short time. But it's never gotten back up to that number. And with all the people we have in Rochester, we should have at least 1,000 people that'll, support us. But yeah, I've definitely got to reach out and get, more people getting the word out there that, hey, these kids, the library has said if they can make the revenue, they can do what they want with the money, put it back into the club. So it's possible. It's just what I'm seeing is the support with people's time, with people's attention is not there as much as I thought it would be, because I figured the library is going to do this for the kids are going to make money, the kids are going to feed themselves, the kids are going to be entertained, the kids are going to be off the streets. I figured the support would be there, but it's really not. The attention, the views that would bring the kids revenue is not there as much as I expected.
I'm listening kind of like to what everybody's saying, and because my initial thought kind of was, I wish one of the biggest challenges that I think very similarly to y'all's is just that I want kids and their parents to believe in them as much as I do, like more than me, and teaching them about careers, showing them people that are in these careers, giving them the opportunity to try careers out. And just kind of not get defeated about the fact that they still don't see themselves there, even though that's what they want for themselves. They're having difficulty. And I think something Jeff said kind of made me think about kind of what I think we all struggle with is stakeholders, but also people's investment, their time, really just their time. Because like you said, Jeff, you could just watch my Twitch stream. And if enough people come on, we can make money to do something with this. Not necessarily even donating money. Donate your time. You might not even be watching stream, but pull it up, do it. And I just think that's such really a huge challenge, is to get people to invest anything. Sometimes it's you're not asking really for anything, a little bit of your time. And that could just open up so many doorways for people, for the kids, for their siblings, for their parents. But I love where the conversation was going, just because, if we work together as a group, as a community, to help build our own community and our groups and things like that, that's such a huge and positive change that can be made.
So the system principal in me is coming out right now, because there is a way to build this out, making it a part of the school culture. And when I say that, is making sure that we are using this as an incentive at the end of the week to get kids buy-ins, but then also using it as incentive. I come from charter school world, and parents had to do mandated community service hours. And one of those ways is to develop workshops for parents to sit in, to take their parent hat off. And I have one now. It's called "You Can Get With This, You Can Get With This." You can get with this, you can get with that. And it's really an overview of making parents understand the importance of where we are at now, right now, of them in the gaming space, of them understanding where they were, and making them tap into their inner child as the inner child gamers, of going over Pac-Man, Mortal Kombat, Oregon Trail, and really bringing it up to date to where we are with our students. We're doing everything that we did when we were younger, but now our students are just doing it in a more innovative and digital way. But it's all about having that conversation and creating those moments for parents. And it's all about being that representation, having parents understand, but then making sure administrators understand it. People may say, what is Twitch? Some people may not even know that. So you guys doing a 101 of Twitch 101, streaming 101, content creation 101, but then put it into your school culture calendars for it to be a buy-in, or your library, because I know librarians do culture too. Librarian culture and activities that have the buy-in from parents as well.
So we are a little bit over time. We're at time at the moment, but I do want to wrap with maybe one last question. We're talking about this as a community. Obviously, we're not solving any issues at the moment, just having these discussions, but I think it's important that we continue to raise awareness. So if we're looking at our audience and we're looking at potentially even just industry, what would all of your recommendations be for those folks out there? If they're thinking about diversity, thinking about representation and access, what would be your just one step or first step that you encourage everyone, whether they're a school, an organization, institution, or even the industry, to consider in order to help the space?
Well, first and foremost for me, stop being fearful You know, it's so many people who are just afraid that this technology is just going to hurt their kids. It's everything all has a balance, right? Everything has a balance, right? So if we're in a position to implement that balance across the board, these kids are going to be fine. We just have to give them structure and direction. But that comes from just simply not being fearful. Don't be scared about, you know, your kids playing video games. Back when I was growing up, and I don't want to date myself too much, but they was like, man, video games is gonna rot your brain. I remember folks who used to say that, and I was, I was a pretty cool kid in high school, right? So, I was lucky. I wasn't one of those kids that just. I was one of those kids that sat in the dark and played Final Fantasy for a long time. But I was also on the other side, right? So but me being that kid, video games are gonna rot your brain. That was because they didn't know and they would fail for what they say. People fear what they don't understand, hate what they can't conquer. Guess that's just the theory of man. It all comes from the fear. So once we put ourselves in a position where we aren't as fearful, then we'll really make a lot of progress. I dropped the bar for y'all. If y'all, I dropped the bar. If y'all didn't notice, I dropped the bar.
Encouraging a cipher at the last minute.
Definitely did a quick 5-part. Yeah, definitely. My biggest thing is, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Just the one step that you would encourage any educational institution or even the industry to consider in order to help move this conversation in space.
Sure. When we're talking about 21st century learning, understand that this is it. A lot of times it's not clearly defined, but as Dr. Kim just said over here in LAUSD, who has actually created an esports curriculum, and they actually have esports class time. Understand their value. Understand where you're meeting each other. If we're talking about 21st century, this is it. 21st century does not contain traditional learning. This is for all my educators. Tap, tap. Do you hear me? Let's get away from the books. Let's really figure out and understand the implementation of how all general education standards fall into esports and gaming. And let's teach from that. There are different metrics. There are different philosophies, i.e. I'm plugging NASEF's curriculum because it's 100% free. And if you sign up and join our company, you can get access to all the curriculum that's there and the different lessons. Take advantage of what's out there. Understand that you're adding tools to your toolbox and not removing tools. You're adding innovative tools to make you an innovative teacher, but also to make your educational standards and classroom stand out so that it's reaching all students. Remember that gaming is the love language to all students.
I'm a keep it basic. Care. Everybody has a lot going on in their lives, in the world. It is busy, but simply giving a little bit of your empathy and your emotion to what kids are interested in and what kids are doing makes a huge difference, because they feel it when you care. And having honest care for something that they're interested in, I truly believe will turn into action.
I'm gonna give mine. I would say the one thing you got to do is meet the kids where they're at. There's discussion with violence in video games. There's discussion with what games we should and shouldn't be playing. What I'm doing at my library is I'm meeting the kids right where they're at. So we had a bunch of kids that like playing violent video game. They like to play Fortnite. It's a shooting game. When I did my event with the police, I was pretty nervous that they would say, hey, we're not playing Fortnite with the kids that has guns in there or whatever. But luckily, talking with the police, they were like, yeah, we'll meet the kids right where they're at. And we had a great event. We had, like I said, those police in the academy that were really young playing against, kids that they weren't that much older than, and playing a great game. And they got to, eat together. They got to play together, stream together. It was a fundraiser. They got to raise money together. In the future, they'll be cops, and my kids will be adults. When they're older, one of those guys that played Fortnite with the kids at the library in the esports event will be maybe the police chief of police, and their kids will be playing Fortnite at the library too. So meet the kids right where they're at. And in doing that, we had those kids, like I said, that we met them where they were at playing violent video games. And now on Saturday, they're going to be shoutcasting at a professional event. They're going to be helping set up a professional event. They'll be streaming, 2 times a week, trying to make revenue. So you can't really, do it how you want to do it. You got to meet the kids where they're at and then take it from there.
And then I'll just wrap up and say ditto to what everybody else said.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all sharing your unique perspectives. And I find it interesting, even though we're gathering talking about Scholastic Esports, we ended up spending most of our time talking about building awareness, building community, creating more representation and diversity. And I don't think that that's necessarily what people expected. So I appreciate all of your comments and thoughts. And I encourage everyone out there to continue connecting with all of these amazing leaders in the community. So thank you again. And I hope everyone tunes in. We'll have our next podcast next month, typically in the middle of the month. So stay tuned and feel free to reach out. So thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you're at.